I didn't have a song that kind of fit what I was going to teach on, so I went back years and years ago to remember a song I wrote that Betty Jean recorded. And so I thought I would try to do it. And it's called There's Coming a Day. And she recorded this back in 78 or 79 or something. So it's a real old song, but it's pretty well up to date. So if you'll play number 2, tell my orchestra to put their donuts down and get to work. Here we go. Well, we didn't go very far, did we? Okay. There's coming a day we're gonna be leaving, called away to a heavenly home. But it's gonna take more than just believing. You've got to keep your eyes on Jesus and leave this old world alone. In the Holy Bible, there's a powerful question. Turn this up, please. What would you do in exchange for your soul? But you'll find no answer in man's possession, 'cause the price could never be paid with silver and gold. There's coming a day we're gonna be leaving, called away to a heavenly home. But it's gonna take more than just believing. You got to keep your eyes on Jesus and leave this old world alone. There once was a rich man who came to Jesus. He said, "What must I do to know that I'm saved?" But when he heard the answer, he went away grieving. If you want to have treasure in heaven, there's a price to pay. There's coming a day we're gonna be leaving, called away to a heavenly home. But it's gonna take more than just believing. You got to keep your eyes on Jesus and leave this old world alone. Coming a day we're gonna be leaving, called away to a heavenly home. But it's gonna take more than just believing. You got to keep your eyes on Jesus and leave this old world alone. Keep your eyes on Jesus and leave this old world alone. That's an oldie, years and years ago. And I had Betty Jean's soundtracks there at the house, and of course she sings in a different key than I do, but I thought I'd try that. I want to talk to you this morning about the mark of the righteous. Now, the word mark has got different definitions. We see in Philippians that Paul said, he said, "I press on for the prize of the mark of the high calling of God." Well, that is a different definition for the word mark than the one we're going to use today. The different definition is the one we use today is an identification. It's a mark of identification. The one that Paul used was a mark of accomplishment. You know, it's like being graded on a different mark. But this we're going to use today, this morning, is it's called a to consider, to take heed, or to look at, to examine. So that's what we're going to be talking about this morning. We're going to go to Ezekiel chapter 9, and I want to bring something out. First of all, just to get us going, Ezekiel chapter 9. Let me see where I'm at here. I was almost there. Okay. Ezekiel chapter 9. He's talking about a vision that he had, and the Lord said, go get these men, and each one came with a weapon in their hand, but one of them had what they call an inkhorn. And it said that, I looked up the word inkhorn, and different definitions. It really means a container for ink, but used for a pen or a brush to form letters. You know, that's what it's for. You can imagine where it is. It's a horn like a container. But in verse 9, look at verse 2 and 3. Let's see. 6 men came from the way of the higher gate and left toward the north, and every man a slaughter weapon in his hand, and one man among them was clothed with linen, with the writer's inkhorn by his side, and they went in and stood beside the brazen altar. Now let's see what 3 says. And the glory of the Lord of Israel was gone up from this cherubim whereupon he was to the threshold of the house, and he called to the man clothed with linen, who had the inkhorn. Now this is what he told him. He said in verse 4, he said, and to him, go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and set a mark upon the foreheads of the men that sigh and that cry for all the abominations that be done in the midst of Jerusalem. Now listen to this. Now in verse 6. Slay utterly old and young, both maids and little children and women, but come not near any man upon whom is the mark. He's talking about the mark that he placed on their head. Now this morning I wanted to get into the divisions of God's people and the people of the world. This marking has been going on for thousands of years. And you don't know the mark. Nobody can see the mark, but you yourself determine whether or not you're going to receive that mark. Now there's another mark later on in Revelation we know about the mark of the beast, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the mark that God places on you to set you apart from the world. And it's been done for hundreds of years, for thousands of years. This mark has been placed on God's people. Now in Exodus, we was at this just a few weeks ago, I think. We was in Exodus, in Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Genesis, Exodus. Okay. And in chapter 8, matter of fact, I brought this out. That God makes a division between his people and the people that are not his. Now, in 8 verse 23, in Exodus 8 verse 23, he says, and I will put a division between my people and thy people. Tomorrow shall this sign be. And he's talking to Pharaoh. And he's telling him, and Moses being the speaker, he said, I'm putting a difference between your people and mine. But we never thought there is a reason for that. There's a reason why he separates you from the world. Because in your heart, he sees. He sees how you will react, how you will respond to every situation. He knows what's in your heart. He knows how you feel. But we see right here why he made a mark between the two. You back up to Exodus 3. And here's what he says. In verse 7 we'll start. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people, which are in Egypt, and have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. Now what made them set apart? Look at verse 9. Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel is come unto me. This is the difference. The reason that he marked these people and made a division between them is because they cried out to him. There wasn't any false gods in their homes or nothing. They knew exactly who he was, and they was crying out to him. And that cry in prayer, and the moaning and the groaning and the crying of the people, that was a cry of faith coming from them, that they knew that God was there and he heard every word they said. And so they cried for this, the reason they was in bondage, and they cried out. And for that cry and for that concern and that recognition of God and who he was, he marked them and put a division between them and the people of Israel. I mean, people of Egypt. I'm going to turn quite a bit of pages now, so, if you just kind of bear with me. I like to read these things because it makes it more, you just get more out of it if you just read it. I want you to look over in Psalms 91. Psalms 91. We've heard it for years and years and years. Now look in 91. And he tells us in verse 1, he that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High abideth under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say unto the Lord, he is my refuge, my fortress, and my God. In him will I trust. That made the mark. That caused him to be marked. Look at verse 9. Because thou hast made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation. There shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. So we see that these people that believed, that made God their habitation, the very place that they live, they put all their trust in him, they're marked. They're marked here not to receive any plagues. They're marked here to be blessed. Now we can go back. Psalms 1. I'm just might as well just go ahead and read them, because they'll stick with you longer. Psalms 1. Verse 1, blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of the sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. His delight is in the law of the Lord, and his law doth he meditate day and night. Now, that right there brings the mark upon the person. But look what happens in chapter 2. No, number 5. Let's look at 5. I got it marked here, 4 and 5. The ungodly are not so. What does he mean by that? They don't commit themselves to walk not in the counsel of the ungodly. They don't commit themselves not to stand in the way of the sinners, nor sit in the seat of the scornful. They do not make a decision to delight in the law of the Lord and meditate on his law day and night. So it says here, the ungodly are not so, but are like the shaft that the wind driveth away. They're not solid, not secure. They can't hang on to nothing, have no faith in nothing, because they won't make this commitment up here in verse 1 and 2. So that's why these people in Psalms 1 and 2, that's why they're marked. And that's why all down through history, that spiritual inkhorn, that being, that angel, that I don't know what you would call it. I would say is an angel in supernatural form, looks at our life constantly and looks at what we believe and what we do, how we react, and he places a mark on us to cause a division between us and that world out there. There's people out there in that world that don't care nothing about this church. They care nothing about this Bible. They don't care anything about Christian people. Matter of fact, some of them gone as far as to hate them and fight against them. There's people that, without a doubt, in the last days, will receive another mark. And we know what that is. But the marks that I'm talking about this morning is one that separates, and it's given to those that make a commitment. Now look at, that's Psalms 1. We're going to look over here at a couple more people and see why they were marked. Look in 1 Peter, way over in the New Testament. He's talking about a couple in the Old Testament, but we'll go over here and find out what he says. 1 Peter. Well, let's make it 2 Peter. 2 Peter 2:5. Second Peter chapter 2, beginning with verse 5. He's talking about Noah. He said that that God spared not the old world, but saved Noah, the eighth person, a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood upon the world of the ungodly. Why was Noah marked? Of all of the people in the world, why was he marked and his life and family saved? Why was he set apart? Here's the answer. A preacher of righteousness. That caused the mark to be put on this man. Now the next one we read about is Lot. Look in 2 Peter 2, 7 and 8. Look at 7 and 8. And delivered just Lot, vexed with the filthy conversation of the wicked. The man was vexed. I wrote down what vexed means. It means irritated, troubled. He didn't like the way the people spoke. But he was vexed with a filthy conversation of the wicked. I'm telling you, it don't take you long to be vexed over what people say nowadays. If you listen, those people have no thought whatsoever. You can sit in the restaurant and hear people talk saying the filthiest things, and little children running around, and you just want to jump up and say, man, what is wrong with you? You know, how can you eat with that mouth as trashy as it is? You know, but this Lot was vexed by this conversation of the ungodly. And that being vexed, being troubled by that, it says in 8, for that righteous man, there's that word again, dwelling among them and seeing and hearing, vexed his righteous soul from day to day with their unlawful deeds. What the conversation they had and the way they acted, it troubled him so, and God saw that in his heart, that he hated evil. And he marked him. And you know the story of Lot. When the Sodom and Gomorrah fell, you know, God delivered Lot. Now, let's go again. Matthew 25. We want to find here that the marked and the unmarked are separated. And the separation is obvious as time goes on. It's more obvious now than it's ever been. Oh, if my nose don't run plumb out in the parking lot, I'll be all right. Matthew 25, I think what happens here in Matthew 25. In, I think it's 32, 33. Yeah, 32, listen. Matthew 25, 32. And before him shall be gathered all nations, and he will separate them one from another, as a shepherd divideth his sheep from the goats. He shall set the sheep on his right hand and the goats on the left. Now, you see this separation. All through Scripture, you see a definite separation in God's people and the people of the world. You're seeing it today, though it's been taking place since the beginning of time. It's been taking place. People have been marked all down through history, and this generation is no different. You can walk into a room sometimes and you can feel the evil in it, but you can also walk into a room sometimes and sense the presence of God on some people and know that they're marked. It's like that. It's so strong sometimes. Now here's the thing. What would cause Jesus to choose you as a little lamb or a sheep rather than a goat? A lot of differences. Your actions, what you believe and what you stand for, has a lot to do with it. But here's something mentioned in John 10. I'm just about through going back and forth in the Scripture. Wait a minute. In John 10. Look what it says. John 10, 4 and 5. Look what it says. And when he putteth forth his own sheep, he goeth before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. And a stranger will they not follow, but will flee from him, for they know not the voice of strangers. You want to know why you're marked? Because you know God's voice. You know his voice. And you won't hear a bunch of foolishness out here in the world and fashion your life after that. You know the voice of your master. And that marks you. You're just as marked as this, if they come with an inkhorn and stamped it on your head. You're just as marked. Now I wanted to... It says that they will not follow another. Well, if a Christian does get off track, it won't be long till God reveals they're on the wrong track, and he'd draw them right back into place. So you won't get out there very far, because he'll come after you. The shepherd will come after you if you get all mixed up sometimes. But just to test ourselves, just to test ourselves, there's a lot of different ways in this Scripture that you can look at and compare to your life and see if really there is a mark on your life. Number one, are you a righteous man like Noah? The word righteous, is a dual meaning word. It means right living. It also means the righteousness that we are made righteous through Christ. So the righteousness of God is different from living right. But you can tell by the way a person lives whether or not they're marked. Or do you have a righteous soul, or are you vexed by evil like Lot? Does it bother you when you turn the TV on and you hear that filthy language? You're just trying to hear the news and you got to sit through that? Does it bother you to know that there's people coming across that border down there that's selling drugs to children? Does that bother you? It should. And if it does bother you, you're marked. God sees it because it bothers him. And I'll go as far. I've said this before. It's all right to be mad if God's mad. And I can tell you one thing. When them little children down there are abused and they're selling these drugs in our country, and these big drug, what they call them, the pushers and the other guys, cartel, yeah. When they are stealing little children and selling them and doing everything in the world to them that you can imagine, when they're hurting people right and left, killing people, let me tell you something, God is mad. He's mad, and his children should be mad. You're marked. If you hate evil, you're marked. You might as well write it down. Do you cry out to God like the people of Israel? When God sent Moses to them, he heard their cry. Is he hearing our cry? Did you cry out to him when troubles come, you know? Yes, you do. Sure you do. I've heard you in this altar. God hears every word of it. And he marks every time you pray, he marks it down. And he knows exactly what's in your heart. But more than that, you're marked as one of his children. Have we made the Lord our habitation? Like in Psalms 91. The word habitation is it comes from the word inhabit. It means to live. Do you base all your living on God? Do you trust him for everything that you have? Is he where you live and breathe and have your being? Is he the center of your life? That's what he's asking. Do you make the Lord your habitation? You're marked if you do. Where we live is what he's talking about. Every facet of your life should be surrounded by the Spirit of God. Every decision you make and the actions you take, because you live in him. And if you do, you're marked. Are you blessed like in Psalms 1? You know, you the blessed man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, standeth in the way of sinners, sit in the seat of the scornful. You love the law of the Lord and you meditate on his law day and night. I mean, if those characteristics are part of your life, you're marked. Just as well as David was talking about in Psalms. Do you sigh and cry over sin like in Ezekiel? That's the reason these people went with these, or these spirits went with this ink and marked people, because it said they cried and sighed for the evil that was going on. And I've heard some of you pray for the people coming across that border, and for the people that's having hard times, that's lost their jobs, and people that's going hungry. I've heard you. But that's not important. God heard you. And so that is part of your mark. Yes, you're marked. Do you know his voice? And you will not follow another. This is his voice. Do you know his voice? He speaks out loud to some people. He does. But mostly he will speak through this word. He's watched over it for thousands of years to make sure that it's there and right for us. So do you hear his voice and you won't listen to strangers? You don't follow every goofball that comes around. You don't follow that because you know his voice. There's people that are out in this world that use the gospel for making money and use it to control people and use it to build enterprises and all this stuff. But the people that are marked of God know his voice. And a stranger they will not follow. So if that is part of your life, if you just constantly wonder what the Bible says about any situation. Well, what does it say about this? What does it say about that? If you even consider that this right here is the voice of God, you're marked. You're marked. But I almost want to close it down. Didn't have a lot to say, but I hope I said something you remember. The mark there is that he's talking about is to consider, to it's in our language it means to check out to examine, So he's telling these men with the inkhorn, he said, go examine these people. Go examine them and see if you want to put a mark on them. And that's what he does with us. He examines our life all the time. He wants to see how you react, see what's in your heart. Remember last week I talked about heart, having heart trouble. To believe in your mind and believe in your heart is two different things. If you believe in your heart, it will change your life. But you can believe in your mind and just consent that something is true. Just even confess that something is true. But if it's in your heart, it's going to change your life. So you can also know that it's in your heart when you're marked. So all you marked people, I appreciate you letting me speak to you this morning. God bless you.